Welcome to Parkbench Tutors and to a short podcast on the accounting equation. This is one of a series of podcasts designed to help you complete the quizzes that we have. The accounting equation is that assets are equal to liabilities plus equity. You should also be familiar with being able to restate this so that you can express assets in terms of liabilities and equity, but also express liabilities in terms of the other two, and so on. So equity, for example, is equal to what? Or liabilities, what are they equal to? So Rockhard Quarries then has assets of 500,000 and liabilities of 2,000, and we have to determine the equity. So we're going to solve this in a number of different stages. The first is that we've got to write out our accounting equation so that we've got the required quantity is going to appear on the left hand side. So the required quantity is, it says, determine the equity. So equity will be equal to the assets less the liabilities. So we now start by filling in the numbers. So we have equity is equal to 500,000, the assets, less 200,000, the liabilities. So the last thing we do then is the arithmetic. 500,000 minus 200,000 gives 300,000. Let's try it with another example. If Hard Rock Quarries had liabilities of 600,000, equity of 500,000, then what are going to be the total assets? So here we've got to arrange the equation so that we've got the assets on the left, so assets will be equal to liabilities plus equity. So we fill in the numbers and we have 600,000 for liabilities, 500,000 for equity. So assets is equal to 600,000 plus 500,000. Do the arithmetic, we have 1,100,000. What about some of the other terms we use? We often talk about increasing or decreasing assets or increasing or decreasing liabilities, and we use these terms whenever a transaction has occurred to help us try and explain what has happened. And we need to do this then with the accounting equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity. So we'll use the Hard Rock Quarries as our example. Hard Rock Quarries have a payment for materials of 40,000. They receive a payment. So what's increased? They've received, so money has come in, 40,000 has come in. So the assets have increased by 40,000. And if we look at the equation, assets equals liabilities plus equity, the liabilities haven't altered, so assets on the left have increased by 40,000, something else on the right must have increased by the same amount, and that of course is equity. So the accounting equation is balanced. Now let's consider two transactions. Hard Rock Quarries receives an invoice for £45,000 after purchasing a van for this amount. So what's affected? We've got assets, liabilities, and we have equity. So we've acquired the assets because we've got a van, but we've also required a liability because we've received the invoice for the van, which tells you that we haven't as yet paid for that van. So assets and liabilities have both increased by £40,000, and that means the accounting equation will remain balanced. Assets can be of different types, so Hard Rock Quarries considers each of the following to be assets: the buildings that it owns, the plant and equipment that it owns, the cash that it owns, any money owed to the business, they're often called receivables, and the rock which the business is able to quarry and sell. So let's consider some transactions involving these assets and how the accounting equation is affected. So Hard Rock Quarries buys a crushing mill for 78,000 and it pays cash for the mill. So we start by thinking about what's happened in this transaction. It has a crushing mill for 78,000 and it's paid cash for the mill. So the asset of plant and equipment has got the crushing mill added to it. So that has gone up by 78,000, and the asset of cash is altered. We paid cash for the mill, so we've used £78,000 worth of cash. So whilst the asset of plant and equipment has increased, the asset of cash has decreased by the same amount, but the accounting equation will remain balanced. Hugo Williams is the owner of Dump It Skips, a business that hires skips to remove rubbish. So how does the following transaction affect the accounting equation? Hugo invests £50,000 of his savings in the business. So the assets of business, the cash, has gone up by 50,000. That means that the equity or interest that Hugo has in the business has also increased by 50,000. So assets and equity have both increased by the same amount. We can say that the accounting equation remains balanced. What happens if Hugo takes money from the business? Well, it depends what the money is taken for. In this case, he's taken £400 from the business bank account for personal use to pay for a hotel. So if it's the business account that's used, then the transaction is affecting the accounting equation. The asset of cash is reduced by £400. The withdrawal also means that Hugo's equity or interest in the business is reduced by the same amount, by £400. So asset and equity are reduced by the same amount, and the accounting equation remains balanced. Hopefully that gives you a little better understanding of the accounting equation. This little podcast for help with quizzes was brought to you by Parkbench Tutors. Thank you for watching and for listening. For more information on Parkbench Tutors, visit us on parkbenchtutors.com.